Welcome to the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast, the show dedicated to bring you the news from the oil patch deep in the heart of Texas, with your host, Ryan Ray and Josh Shelton.
And we're back with the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in to today's episode. This is episode 217. I'm your host, Josh Shelton, my friend and co-host, Ryan Ray. Ryan, oil prices are down a little bit. They're on the rise right now. Overall, it looks like there's some concerns with this Delta variant, like we've been talking about. Some interesting news from the feds this week. So there's a lot going on, man. How are things going in your world this morning?
There is a lot going on, man. It's good. I was out of town, last week, and so man, I've gotten to the point now to where, as I've gotten older, I don't sleep as good on the road as I used to. I used to not bother me at all, but now we've got it dialed in here at the house to where it's like 68 degrees. I've got the right blankets, I got the right pillows, the whole shebang. And so when I'm gone, I don't sleep as well. So it's good to be back. It's good to be back here in the great state of Texas. I was down at Mississippi for something we will talk about maybe in a later podcast episode or on my LinkedIn. But Josh, before we get into anything else, let's thank our sponsor, which is the Jubilee Royalty Fund, number 2. Why number 2? Because number 1 is done, folks. It's done. It's gone. It's over with. It's oversubscribed. It's closed out. But there still is time for Fund 2. If you're interested and you're an accredited investor in investing in Fund 2, reach out to the good folks at Jubilee. You can tell them I sent you, Tim Kotzman, or my boy Alex there. We'll link to them in the show notes. You can check out the website at jubileeroyalty.com. That's jubileeroyalty.com. I am actually an investor trying to get Josh Shelton to invest, but he's like Scrooge McDuck over there. Won't give a brother a dime. So, but I'm invested in Fund 1 and Fund 2, Josh. That's how much I believe in Jubilee Royalty. So thanks to them for sponsoring the podcast. To your point, oil is sitting here at $65.40 this morning. Natural gas at $3.89. So listen, like we talk on the podcast quite regularly, this is a good number. Right, so it is down. It is soft from where it was, but it's still a good number. It's not a bad number. Now, if we went from 60 to 50, I think we'd be going okay. We're flirting in the danger zone here, but at 65, we're still good. And I'm sure your boy Biden ain't going to shut down the economy, right?
I hope not. I'm not sure, but I hope not. Ryan, I think one of the interesting aspects is, why did the price fluctuate the way that it did? And so I have one article here: oil sinks on signals Fed may soon end the stimulus. And by the stimulus, what they're referring to is that the bond buying program. So right now, that's been the major thing holding interest rates down. Is the Feds have been buying the bond buying program has been holding these rates low, and there's reports that majority of them, they're getting ready to end that. And so just the news that they're thinking about ending them is what many think is the stimulus that caused the impetus that caused it to reverse. So. What's interesting to me, Ryan, is how this one this one aspect of the market can quickly affect many other markets, and that's kind of the thing that I want to pay attention to.
Yeah, and you also have signs that demand's weakening in China potentially, and so we'll see where that goes. China likes the cheap oil, so is it when the prices got high, you thought potentially they were, they quit buying because of the higher prices. They bought a lot towards the end of last year. Now the prices are back down somewhat, and they're saying they're not buying. So we'll see. They're not buying at the level they were. So we'll see what the Chinese demand is as well. But listen, I know this morning that the news came out that the vaccine was FDA approved finally. So theoretically, you could get a lot more people vaccinated. I don't know if that's going to help or not. I know we got a story about Chevron talking about the vaccinations. Yeah, I think this is where we're at, which is, the Delta variant. How do people respond? And if you follow the news outside the mainstream media, you see that there are some folks globally who are not very content with what's going on right now. So how does that play out? And so it's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, well, there are concerns out there. It was like I think New Zealand. I think they had one.
They had
case.
one case.
One case. They shut the whole country down.
Listen, New Zealand. Listen to me. Be embarrassed. Okay, for our listeners in New Zealand, be embarrassed. I'm sorry. You should be embarrassed. I'm sorry. One case.
Yeah. That
This is the third time they shut down. To be clear, or fourth. It's not like they've shut down one time. New Zealand has shut down like this is the third or fourth time. So, for all those folks, listen. I'm not saying don't get the vaccine. I don't care. Get the vaccine. I don't care one way or another. Wear a mask. Like I don't care about any of that. But if New Zealand, which is like the size of my house, can't shut down and keep the virus out, then folks, come on, let's be realistic here.
Well, so the concern I have, Ryan, I mean, I don't think New Zealand, is a big player in terms of oil demand internationally to begin with.
Sure.
But just for the consumers there, just for the people, the citizens, the economy, I don't know how they're going to be able to sustain such drastic measures on these shutdowns, single case. I saw where they said that they didn't have a great healthcare system in place, so they can very easily be overwhelmed. Like it could happen very quickly. That's something I saw some of the New Zealand natives were saying. But I think also Australia is having some pretty severe shutdowns right now, lockdowns that I think could have some impacts on oil demand there as well. So with China, I mean, what's going on like street level? Are they locked down in any way?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, the various parts of the country, I don't know what's going on location by location, but I know one of their major ports, I think, shut down.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that was more of what I was referring to. But yeah, to your point, New Zealand and Australia are not going to necessarily overly impact the oil and gas price, but what you can see, and this is what we saw last year with the coronavirus, which is as certain countries do something, more countries feel that they can build upon what they're doing. They can say, look and see what this country's doing, therefore we can do it. Look and see what this country's doing. And we see that all the time, right? This is normal human nature, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Look and see what this person does, and now I can do it. And so when you see New Zealand or Australia, or if it's China or wherever, these countries that are considering or going back under lockdown, the concern has to be from a demand standpoint is that more countries will follow along and go with that. And so that's, I think, the demand side concern. But so far it hadn't happened. But listen, it feels like this news is kind of day by day kind of shifting, and we're not really sure where it's going to land. So who knows?
Yeah, that's going to be something interesting to watch. Is just kind of how all of the nations are responding to oil and gas right now. So there's two articles here, Ryan, I was going to mention. The first one is Reuters. This one talks about just the weaker dollar, which really ties into the Feds and the stimulus and some of the thoughts that it basically are along the lines of when some of these stimuluses stop, the impact on the value of the dollar is really going to become more pronounced. But I also think that if they stop by, doing these bond buybacks, we might see inflation really begin to slow down. I don't know if we can reverse it, but that's also going to have a reverse effect on mortgage rates, housing prices. There's going to be a reckoning at some level somewhere, and I'm just I wonder how it's going to affect oil prices when they do that, and not just from the standpoint of oil markets reacting, but just once the market ends this, I guess, this artificial period where everything kind of gets back to reality, what is that going to look like for WTI? And that's a question. I don't know if anybody really knows the answer to it, but I wonder if there's economists that are actually making predictions about where WTI will end up once everything kind of refluctuates.
Oh, well, there's someone making predictions. Most of them are wrong, including mine. But the other thing, you talk about weakening. The other thing is that we're getting ready to come out of the driving season, right? So gasoline demand is going to start to weaken over the next, I guess when full full. When I guess school gets back fully into swing by the end of this month for sure across the
Yeah,
nation.
for sure.
You'd say by the end of August for sure that we're going to see the gasoline demand go down. So that should have some impact on prices. And then the other thing is, I was thinking that going into the fall, we would see a lot of potential for maybe more travel than normal to go into football games and stuff like that because people missed out last year. But you're starting to see now, especially pro teams, are coming out saying that you got to either have a negative. I saw the Saints are saying that you got to have a negative test, a vaccine to get in the game. Even if you have that, you got to wear a mask. So negative test or the vaccine, and regardless, you got to wear the mask. So, I mean, maybe they'll pack the Superdome with 70,000 people, maybe not. I don't know. I think those are questions. If you start seeing NFL stadiums that are requiring this that aren't full, that is going to, it's going to impact demand. It's not going to move the price $6 or something like that, but it is just going to tell us that, hey, man, we're just, these things are still stifling the economy.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Yeah, basically, it's just going to signal that, to investors, people that are looking at the market, we're not quite in the clear yet. So interesting here, Ron. So there's a couple of things. First, Chevron are beginning vaccination mandates. COVID-19 is supposedly having a impact on people that are out in the field. Also, I have a family member. I'm not going to specify companies or names or whatever, but there was a protocol where when you go offshore, that you had to go out and quarantine for 5 days before you could go out, before you could start work. And that was put in place for those who were not vaccinated. Now, that 5 days was paid. You were getting paid for that 5 days while you're quarantining. So it wasn't necessarily a penalty. Well, recently they've changed it where when you go out and you quarantine for that 5 days, it's now non-paid. And then you go out and start working. So you can guess what a lot of people did is actually decided to go ahead and go with the vaccination because it's going to cost them 5 days.
I'm going to say, listen, you're going to pay me to quarantine for 5 days?
Yeah.
No one's getting vaccinated.
No one's getting vaccinated.
Whatever you come on that side of the issue,
you're
not losing 5 day free pay. So
yeah. So, but once they reverse it, it's 5 days no pay. Well, people started getting the vaccination. So that right now, that was a big one of the majors that as a family member that I had that works there, and then Chevron right now they're beginning some vaccination mandates, and I'm not sure what all protocols they have in place. But Ryan, they're also talking about, and we may have already covered this on the show, but New York was trying to implement their vaccination requirements. Now, did that actually go through?
For the city, I think, but I'm not sure.
So these vaccination requirements are getting kind of interesting to me because some of these things I would have never imagined. I know you mentioned it last year, Ron, and I just thought that we were so far from these sort of requirements that genuinely surprising to me to see some of this stuff come full circle to this. It's man.
Yeah, so the real question for a company like Chevron is what percentage of your employees will get vaccinated? And then the ones that don't, can you replace them with other skilled labor? Right. So if you're talking about a certain percentage of Chevron's employees, any company, the skill level is less than others, right? So if you're talking about a petroleum engineer versus the first day of the rig hand, right? So replacing the rig hand should be potentially easier than replacing the petroleum engineer. So the question is what percentage of those will leave Chevron or another company and go work for someone who doesn't require the vaccine? So I think that's where you could see potentially some of this causing problems. But I suspect that most people will want to keep their job and therefore get the vaccine, and it shouldn't be that big of an issue. But listen, we're so early in the vaccine game still. It's kind of hard to know exactly where this is. And then the flip side of that is if you have to get the vaccine and then you get a booster or something like that, where you see employees down the road who might be tired of it go from there. But I'm not surprised by this. I'm curious what our listeners think. Are you for the vaccine mandates from your company? Do you not care? Let us know. Reach out and let us know what you guys think, because what is your company doing? We won't say the name on the air, but let us know what they're doing, because I'm curious to see what the employees think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we keep it anonymous or whatever and read it on the air or not. Just let us know.
Yeah, so just to be transparent here, Ryan, based on the numbers I'm seeing, I mean, the vaccines are reducing hospitalizations. So the numbers are coming out where hospitalization rates are being published and at certain hospitals, and it's like 9-1 that are going in are unvaccinated. So at some level, there are protections that are being had with these vaccinations. So I think some of that is becoming undeniable, that it is improving your chances of not being hospitalized. I think the major concern for a lot of people is that they still don't know from a genuinely sincere standpoint what the side effects are. Is that they're just not allowing full transparent disclosure on what these side effects are, and people are just still a little tentative about what are the side effects, how many people are having them, and just open discussion about it. Because I think if there were, I think a lot more people would be apt to go get the vaccine, because apparently they are helping with the hospitalizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, first off, you're listening to a borderline comedy oil and gas podcast, so don't get your vaccine advice from us.
No. Yeah.
That's the first thing. Second thing is, I don't, my stance is the same with the flu shot. I don't, if you get it or don't, I don't really care. If you're sick, don't come around me. That was my stance before COVID. It was common sense. The same stance now. Now, with that being said, there's categories of people, and this is where our listeners and people in the oil field have to figure out. There's some people who don't get the vaccine because they don't get vaccines. It doesn't matter. COVID's regardless, they don't get vaccines.
Right.
Measles, mumps, flu, whatever. Okay. So you got that group of people. Then there's people, which I kind of put myself into, which is I'm not opposed to vaccines. I don't like getting shots in general, so I'm going to avoid getting a shot unless I absolutely have to. So I don't get the flu shot. But when I went to Africa a few years back, I had to get typhoid and some other shots. So I got those. So I don't go seeking out a shot. I don't look for a shot for the first solution. The shot is the last resort. So when I have to get it, I'll get it. So that's kind of my camp. So those two camps really have nothing to do with COVID, right? Now, if I thought COVID was going to kill me, then I'd go get the shot. Instead. So good Lord, if I die of COVID, they're going to run that headline: podcaster who denied COVID would kill him. I'm not saying that. So then there's a category you're talking about, which is, we're not sure. We're trying to think about it. And let's be honest here. If COVID had been covered with a decent amount of intellectual honesty last year, with a decent amount, we'd have a different conversation right now, right? But if you watched it last year, and the media went from hype and hysteria to certain activities were allowed and not to be talked about, like the blatant disregard for intellectual honesty was pretty frustrating. And so I think you have people who are now, to your point, like, well, I'm not opposed to getting a vaccine shot, but what I need to do, and they're trying to figure out, because you feel like you're being misled or lied to. So I don't know. I'll be looking forward to the day where oil and gas demand is not dependent upon this stupid thing. I'm ready for that day. So hopefully that day will be here sooner rather than later. And so, but yeah, let us know what you think about the vaccine shots. I'm curious what our listeners think. You can, again, we'll keep it anonymous or won't read it on the air or whatever. Just more curious in general. Ryan at warroommedia.com.
Well, not to name any names, but there was a guy when we were having a show, Ryan, where they commented in while we were live on air and said, having these masks will prevent us from shutting down again, which will help oil demand, which will speed things up. And one of the things that we were pointing out is that it goes from masks to vaccines to whatever's next, where somebody's in control of what has to be done in order for you to get your life back, or for you to get your job back, and that's really the concern on my side. It's just these people that have control. What if they decide next, well, you got to switch away from fossil fuels before we're going to let the economy open back up again? Or, you have all these other things that could work itself out, and you don't want them having the keys to that door. Sure.
I mean, yeah, and to the point about the mask is, why is New Zealand having to had to beat it 3 times now?
Yeah.
Right. So obviously.
So here's another. So this is kind of a curveball, Run. So we talked about Afghanistan last week. There was an article that came out that China both worries and hopes as U.S. departs Afghanistan. So this article basically goes into opportunities that China sees for itself to come in and help develop Afghanistan. But there's also concerns that as the U.S. is leaving, it's going to make their neighbors a little bit more volatile. So one of the questions I have is, will any nation dare to try to go in and build Afghanistan after they've seen this kerfuffle for the last 20 years?
Oh, yeah, someone will do something.
Yeah, I'm about to say, yeah, so somebody is, but I would hesitate to go in and spend a whole lot of time. Either that, there's this article I saw from Julian Assange back from 2011. Have you seen that, where he's talking about he's given his report on Afghanistan, and he says that Europe and the U.S., and I'm not saying this is true, so conspiracy thing, but he said that basically it's a lot of money that's being washed in Afghanistan that's coming back to these particular people in the U.S. and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And so these people wanted the war to be continuous so they could continue sending money in that goes in, comes out clean, and they get to pocket some of it. So it was his little deal. And a lot of people, what's his name? Snowden and Greenwald, they said that was the reason why he's in the situation he's in, is because of that reporting. So
were you trying to get me in trouble now?
Oh yeah. Well, so here's the question. Right?
There's a man in jail, and you want me to comment on it. You're saying him commenting on it is what got him in jail. This feels like a setup. Yeah, you talk about a curveball. We went from oil and gas to Ryan being imprisoned by the U.S. government. You don't know what's happening here. Am I being detained? I don't know. This is worse than the time where you offered to help the hackers to consult with the hackers over the Colonial Pipeline. Okay,
hey, we take checks over here.
I thought this was an oil and gas show, and you bring up Assange and him.
Hey, man, it hit me. It hit me. I don't know why I brought it up. It just kind of hit me. So listen, if you're an oil and gas guru, you might can find a way to take advantage of this Afghan situation here.
Well, I mean, I think there's no doubt that China's going to come in. China's growing influence in the Middle East is undeniable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want to work with Afghanistan? I'm sure China doesn't really seem to have a problem work with most countries. So I don't think it's, on some level, would they like to stick it to the U.S. by working out a deal with the Taliban or whomever? Possibly, but they also they're in the business making money. Can they work together? For the Chinese side, I think that they're going to try to make it work. From the Afghan side, we'll see. And the other thing, since we talked about last time, was will other factions inside Afghanistan, disrupt foreign influence, right? So if you have someone who partners with the Taliban inside Afghanistan, will they purposely target a Chinese infrastructure to make it more tenuous for those relationships? So I don't know, but I'm not commenting on the war stuff. I'm not going to jail today. Satan, not today.
Yeah. Well, just to be clear here, Ryan, I am. I'm just giving unbiased both sides. Just put it out there.
Yeah, we go from COVID talk to Assange talk. Like, this is the setup.
We're flirting with disaster here. Yeah. So I'm interested to see how this situation develops, because if China's able to work something out with Afghanistan, they could actually start using some of their resources more as they begin to become more friendly, which may give them access to all sorts of things that they may not have access to now. A lot of minerals over there. So if there's things they can work out, I don't know how that would affect demand from the U.S. standpoint if they were able to begin to get more resources from there. But I think they would probably still, just because of their size, they would still need their needs would probably still supply the U.S. with opportunities for demand, meet the demands over there.
Yeah. And I think I saw, Josh, the other day, real quick before we get ready to. So we finally have cracked the 500 rig count mark. And so that means that we're up 249 rigs from a year ago.
That's beautiful.
We're at 503. We're up 249 from a year ago. So it's been a long. It feels like it's been a long time, but 249 rigs in a year. That's a pretty good number. Still got a long way to go to get back to where we were, but there it is. So for those, this is interesting. This is the Baker Hughes rig count, and it says at the bottom that part of it's provided by not drilling info, but whatever they are, Enverus or whatever. So I didn't. Did we miss something there? Did they partner and we missed that?
We must have missed it.
Yeah, it's just the working rig location information is provided in part by Enverus. So I didn't realize that they were getting their stuff from Enverus.
They were like not arch enemies, but
close
to it,
Right. I thought they would have been, so I must have missed that. Anyways, okay. All right. Well, I think that is it for today. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, Josh will not be trying to sabotage my life and career by getting me in a jail cell next to Assange. In the meantime, if you're looking to invest, consider the folks over at Jubilee Royalty. Fund number 2 is coming out. It is closing soon, just at the end of October. So if you're an accredited investor and looking to invest in the oil and gas space, be sure to let those folks know or reach out to me. I'll be happy to put you in contact with the good folks over at Jubilee. And until next time, keep climbing.